Hey guys, welcome to the Wild Bits Show. I'm Upamanyu,
And I'm Meghna.
and we have got a great show planned for you. The headline topic for today is the fabulous research by Aleksey Maro. Some of you guys might have seen this piece of research in the media, where he is furthering our knowledge about the drunken monkey hypothesis. So definitely stick around for that. We will be, uh, he, Alexei will be live on our show, but it's in our second half or the second segment that we do at the 1 hour 15 minute around that mark. Other than that, there is another chimpanzee story where there was a rush of training chimpanzees and uh, making them teach sign language and all these different things for TV shows or just for entertainment purposes sometimes or research as well. And those chimpanzees who know sign language, there are only two of them left in captivity right now. So there is a short story around that. And the last one we will talk about again, we might fall short on time, but the last one we might talk about is the solar boom and the toxic waste it's leaving behind. We have some other stories, Meghna.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about how 7 years after Brazil's worst dam disaster, the mining operations have bounced back. And we're also going to be talking about how India's wastelands are actually wildlife havens for large mammals. A new study has found this. Apart from this, if we have time, we'll cover other smaller stories.
Right. Why don't we start with the solar boom story? This is a news report from the Mongabe, and it's titled Malawi's solar boom is leaving a toxic legacy of lead waste. Um, Malawi, Malawi's surge in solar home system adoption is creating a parallel rise in discarded lead acid batteries, posing a significant environmental threat. These batteries, prone to early failure with solar use, um, are often informally recycled, releasing toxic lead and acid into the environment, exemplified by Lagson Gumbo's operation in Blantyre's BCA slum. While more durable, safer battery alternatives exist, their higher cost hinders widespread adoption. The lack of formal waste management in low income areas like Gumbo's exacerbates the problem, with batteries ending up in open dumps and streams. Gumbo and others attempt to restore batteries by replacing positive cells, but the process still involves hazardous materials and contributes to pollution. Um, this is again one of those things um, where we clearly see the negative side or the harmful side of a renewable energy source. Solar obviously is one of those things, one of those energy sources that is very, um, you know, can be very game changing. But the efficiency at what it's at right now, and with it leaving a trail of toxic waste, um, we might have to rethink our strategy of how we deal with solar power.
Yeah, I think this is like a two-edged sword.
Mm.
And I have to like just correct for one thing though. We're talking about Malawi, the country. So I think
Malawi, right?
yeah,
I mispronounced. Sorry.
No, that's yeah. So just so that
Yeah, the East
the
African
listeners,
countries.
yeah, yeah, so that the and listeners know which country we're speaking about. But this is a problem across the world, not just in Malawi. I think everywhere solar is booming. Even in India, in remote places, solar is booming because you can't like really have electric lines or electricity lines all the way to those places. So there are like small solar setups everywhere. The problem is what Oops had said, obviously the efficiency that can be improved, but I think the main problem is the disposal or the recycling of solar panels. That is still a gap in the market. There's like a big loophole where there is nothing being done for recycling the waste properly. So if that
Mhm.
is tapped into, then this renewable energy source can be looked at from an angle that yes, it's great, like it's great for the environment as well. Right now it's great, but there's a but with it.
Mm. And I think the story comes from Malawi, and I feel like Africa is in a unique position to make those innovations and make those progress, the science progress, because um, Africa one is a continent that receives a lot of sun, so that means solar power is really efficient and helpful for that continent. But also at the same time there is a lot of remote places in Africa where, due to multiple conditions, it can be social, it can be economic, multiple reasons, the electricity lines or, the uh, wired electricity might not have reached. So they're in a unique position to reap the benefits of solar power. And also, because they're facing these challenges, also solve this crisis that we are dealing with. Because right now we are in that transition period, trying to move away from fossil fuels into the bright future that is, renewable energy, be it solar, be it hydroelectric, be it geothermal, whatever it is. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just maybe if the solar panels could be durable as well. Like there are some solar panels that have been found that even after 32 years, they operate at almost 80% of their original capacity. Those
Mm,
solar panels have that longevity going for them that other fuels don't have. Like if we go for like fossil fuel or something, they do have high ongoing fuel and maintenance costs. So solar doesn't have that, but to
mm,
tap into it and make it more efficient and make sure that their panels are being recycled responsibly, that would, I think, make the biggest change. Also, oops, don't you think, I don't know, I mean, I find it really weird that you have these huge buildings and then you have these huge parking lots, shaded parking lots, other parking lots. There's so many places in the city that you could have like solar panels on. I don't know why we go into like a desert or a big area and then like cover that area with solar panels.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I actually don't know why we are not doing that. Possibly because the high cost of initial implementation, maybe the organizations or the companies are not willing to. Like the big question mark is who will front that money, right? So maybe the organizations that are responsible or that own those parking lots or malls, even, we have these huge lateral malls that are spread out across a long, stretch of land. Airports, for example, also. I don't know why we are not doing that, but I think here another thing is that is worth mentioning is the battery, because solar power inherently carries with it the requirement of a battery storage. And battery, essentially how we develop a battery is it has to have some kind of acid, and an electrolyte working as that, working in tandem to make sure the transfer of electrons is happening, and positive and a negative charge is being created. So inherently, all batteries will have some kind of toxic acid in them, and that just means that that toxic acid has a high chance. And knowing our history as well as humans, that toxic acid has a high chance of seeping into the environment, which is the also one of the core problems with solar energy, I guess.
Yeah, I think the thing is that obviously we need renewable energy sources over
Mm,
the traditional fossil fuel sources. That is, there is no doubt about it. But I think with the disposal, with the batteries, with the recycling, with the efficiency, there are things that are slowly improving. But till that improves, there has to be something to be done for everything that could be a problem right now, because otherwise this might, accumulate, this waste, these battery acids, this might all accumulate, and it would actually put us off from actually using solar, we want to use solar because we care about the environment. But if solar would have like a lot of buts and ifs, then it would be difficult to implement solar.
mm. And it would just give more ammunition to the deniers, the climate change deniers, or the people who are profiting the most from the fossil fuel industry. The big lobbies and whatnot. Certainly, we know of political interest right now is very much invested in fossil fuels and fracking for more and more oil. And I think those vested interests also need to be sort of neutralized in some ways as well, to make way for the next generation of energy sources. But I think, as I said, like they have recognized the problem, which is often the first step. Like, this is a problem. They have recognized that, and Gumbo, you know that area, they are attempting to restore the balance by trying some innovative solutions. And that's why I think, because Africa receives a lot of sunlight, they are in a unique place to use solar panels and reap the benefits of solar panels. They are also in a unique place to solve these problems for themselves. I think a lot of innovation can come from that.
True, true. I mean, I absolutely agree. So we have to keep our eyes peeled and look for what is
Mm,
happening in the solar world, because we would definitely want more improvement in the disposal. We would want more improvement in probably where the solar panels are being placed, and we would want improvement in their efficiency for sure. I mean, it is a very promising alternative, very very promising.
hmm.
And we have started tapping into it, but hopefully it just keeps getting better for us.
Yeah, and it's a near unlimited power source, like near unlimited source of energy and power. The sun, it will shine on for millions of years, from now. So yeah, definitely we will sort of track this kind of stories, not this story particularly, but like anything related to renewable energy as we do. And yeah, we'll report back on if anything is new there. Um, Other than that, Meghna, what do you want to talk about next?
Okay, so let's switch to the next topic. We're going to talk about Brazil. So 7 years after Brazil's worst dam disaster, mining operations bounce back. 7 years after the Brumadinho dam disaster claimed 272 lives, Whale and Itaminas are restarting, I hope I have the pronunciation right, are restarting mining operations at the Jangada complex, sparking community fears. Residents worry the resumed mining will deplete the local water table, endangering the springs that provide water for hundreds of families in the rural Casablanca district. For over 3 decades, the community independently built and maintained a water collection and distribution system, relying on these springs after previously using a creek. The self sufficient managed system by local association is now threatened by potential water scarcity due to the mining activity, raising concerns about the long term water security of Jangada. And I think this is the problem everywhere, like not just Brazil or anything. I mean, even with COVID, when COVID happened, we really cared about each other. We cared about how people were dying. We cared about how intense COVID was, and now we almost don't even talk about it. We don't even remember it. It's like, so I think with Brazil, it's the same thing, like the same place where the disaster had happened. Now they want to resume the mining operations in the same place and bring those same problems back.
Yeah, true. I think uh, uh, again, this is another part of the globe. I think the all the developing nations and the continents where they're placed, be it Asia, be it Africa, or be it South America, all these areas, they are in a unique position of seeing that high boom for everything, be it economic, be it power, be it energy, everything. They have this huge opportunity because of the huge workforce that they're trying to build and huge economic growth they're trying to build. They have this. They will see all these continents and countries will see a huge boom in all these different areas and sectors. And I think that brings with it, you know, possibilities of such disasters and possibilities of such um you know chaos, I think. And I feel like, while this story is shows that, um how those disasters and how those things can be um you know exacerbated into a great level. But to me, it also feels like these nations have this opportunity to break through this barrier and sort of bring about innovations. As I said, for the Africa story, the Malawi story as well, bring about innovations which solve these problems for themselves and for the world.
Yeah, but I don't know. Oops, I don't think mining works the same way. But I'm
Hmm.
just going to do a quick share, and I'm just going to show where the problem lies. So this is the dam that collapsed on January 25th, 2019, and this wasn't a water dam. This was a dam that collected or had iron ore um, waste or tailings. So this was one of the waste of the mining. So it held mining sludge in it, and then the dam broke and it released 10 million cubic meters or 2.6
Wow.
billion gallons of sludge into the Peba River, and that killed 272 people. So it's very fair for the people here. So this is the Jangada community and the pit. So they're obviously very, very scared of these mining operations starting back. They've seen it happen not even like 7 years ago, and they've seen people die because of a mining sludge problem, like a dam that broke there, and now they have to go through it all over again. And there are some photos. So this is like a memorial for everyone who died from that incident, the Brumadinho incident, and we can see a little post for each person who lost their life due to that incident. Um, and despite this, like, these two companies have been given a joint license to mine. These are protests that are taking part on the roads in the community for against the operations. And I have to really laud how colorful and amazing these posters look like. They just, wow, like they really brought out, like, I mean, I would love to see these posters. If I was in a rally, then these are the posters that would take my attention. Like,
Yeah, very creatively formed. Like, it's not that you just have text on posters, which is usually the case. This looks like a, very long, a significant effort that has gone into creating these visuals as well, which is, most of us consume information by. Yeah, this is really good.
yeah, and
Um,
this is like a graffiti painting where the
mm,
local residents are coming together to create artworks, you know, as part of their protest. So they're trying to do like a really silent, good protest. But the sad part is, like, I mean, something like water is a basic necessity. And if the government can't care enough to not give mining licenses after such a big disasters happen, that's really sad. It's going to put the people at further risk than what they already experienced that. They don't want it. You need to listen to the people in this case.
I I completely agree there, and I think, Meghna, we said this last episode as well, and we have been saying this for a few episodes because we are seeing a lot of stories from South America and Africa. Like these are the two places we see, especially South America, I think, and people there are very aware of these issues, and they are doing the right things to fight back against these issues, which is which is awesome in my view. Like the general public being aware of these issues, because a lot of the times the government will try to distract people from these issues, because the government, in most cases, again not generalizing, but in most cases the government has something to gain from these operations, these huge operations, and there are lobbies acting and whatnot, all the complexities of running a country. But people being aware and wanting to fight and wanting to change this whole how this is going about is a very good sign, I think, for these nations as well.
Yeah, but the thing is, obviously, the people care because they've been through it once. They've seen people lose lives. They've seen how the mining operations work. They've seen the policy, where the sludge has come onto their roads, onto the rivers, and it's killed people. So they don't want to risk that again. And
Mhm.
it's fair for them to ask that. So the government really needs to listen to them. And this is, I think, everywhere it's the same problem, isn't it? It's like in the name of development the governments would keep giving licenses, and they don't
Mhm.
care about the local people that actually live there, who have to deal with the effects of that kind of decision. Like back when I was in uni, this teacher of ours who used to teach us environmental studies, he said that the government and the environment department that actually has to like green flag projects, it's actually
Mhm.
there to green flag all the red flag projects. Like it's just they just made a committee to say yes, we are approving. Like yes, we are approving. We have zero problems with this. Yes, we are approving. So it's just like a facade where the government wants to show the people it cares, but it doesn't care.
Right, right. Like it's just a formality to make sure that legally they are covered. The legal duties are being fulfilled, but other than that, nothing else. Which is really sad. And as I said, like government often tend to do that and distract the public from the real issues at hand. So it's really good that people are fighting back, people are saying these are issues. And we have said this, and I will say this again, that the development and economic growth definitely is a very big thing for the developing nations, often concentrated in South America, Africa, Asia, unfortunately. But also, I think along with that, they will be in a position to balance that and show the world, essentially. And there has been instances where that kind of a outcome has been achieved, that them showing the world how it's done, even though they are driven by economic growth, etc. Them showing the world that we can do better um, than the developed nations. And we have tracked similar stories, I think, from Asia, South America, etc.
Yeah. I mean, I really hope that the people's voices can be heard, because we have similar stories from India, and in the race to become like a superpower or a developed nation, it's the environment that always takes a beating. For us, if people remember, the viewers remember, or the listeners remember, we had this guest Partha who spoke about the Great Nicobar Islands. And right now, a few days back, there was this whole update that the government has said, oh, there's no problem, there's no fragility in the ecosystem. It's absolutely fine to create a port in the Great Nicobar. So that is the reality of our governments, where they do not care about the environment or the local people. So keep fighting, and hopefully this would amount to something, and the government starts listening that development shouldn't come at the cost of the people or the environment.
Right. That is a very, very potent message to send out into the world. Um, cool. Do we want to move to another topic, Meghna?
Sure. Um, do you want to do the dinosaur one first
Oh,
before I?
yeah,
Okay.
cool. Um, this is another, short update. Um, and has been making some rounds. Um, you know, in the paleontology and the people who are very fond of paleontology, those circles, including those people include me, by the way. So this story is from First Post, and it's headlined "New Dinosaur Species Discovered in Sahara Desert. Heron ruled Africa 95 million years ago." Three parliamentary groups are demanding the European Commission withdraw. Oh.
The story is different. Okay, it has. Okay.
Okay.
You might
We
have to
didn't check
read.
the summaries.
Wait, one
Um,
second. Maybe you can
my,
like open
my
the story.
are bad. Um,
Wait.
yeah. I will read from the article. So this says, deep in the remote desert of Niger, paleontologists have uncovered the remains of Spinosaurus mirabilis, a 12-meter long predator that dominated the river systems of the Cretaceous um, period. Um, this is really fabulous. It's not every day that you discover a new species of dinosaurs. And I think in recent times there has been a lot of shows which actually try to recreate all the dinosaurs in 3D and try to place them within their environments and habitats. I think one of them is Prehistoric Planet, that was narrated by David Attenborough for the first two seasons, and then there is also a Netflix series called Our Planet. Um, Walking with the Dinosaurs from BBC. All these series try to create that natural history style show for the dinosaurs. And I think what that does is because um, popular films like Jurassic Park, because we didn't have too much evidence then, but also because they had to make the cinema very exciting, the cinema part of it very exciting. A lot of the films depict dinosaurs in a way, especially how they looked and their appearance and things like that. They have described it in a way that is contradictory to the science that is available. So I think, um, you know, dinosaurs is a topic that I can go on and on about, but this discovery is certainly very very cool in the you know fossil record. Um,
Yeah.
I feel like.
I mean, definitely. I mean, it's always great to know the our ancestors or the ancestors as we call it before the last mass extinction. So, and it's always amazing to figure out if how those dinosaurs were, and some of the things we don't even know, like the kind of fur or the feathers or other things that
Right.
they had. So it's always a mystery, and it's great that we're still unearthing such kind of things. But I also wanted to just show the viewers once where the summary was picked up from. So this Trump's first board of peace meeting is with the whatever photo that they imagine of the dinosaur, and it picked up the first board of peace meetings summary over the dinosaur story, which is the main story.
Yeah. So for the viewers, just wanted to quickly point this out. Those who do not are not quite sure about the periods. So the Mesozoic era had roughly three periods. So the Triassic, the Jurassic, and the Cretaceous. So Cretaceous is the last one um, of the Mesozoic era. So the Triassic era starts around 252 million years ago. and the Cretaceous ends around 66 million years ago. So that's basically the Mesozoic era, and Cretaceous is the last of that era. Dinosaurs mainly ruled in that 186 years of the Mesozoic era. 186 million years, sorry, of the Mesozoic era. Dinosaurs mainly ruled in the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods before going extinct by
But I think
meteor of all
Jurassic,
things.
yeah, and I think Jurassic was the one that stuck with people. So because of the movies,
Of the
so
movies,
now,
yeah.
yeah, so now people only relate to dinosaurs with Jurassic and the movies that were done, and obviously all those movies are fake as we know it, like just like the shark movies, they are just made to sensationalize. For the dinosaurs, they're safe because they're not alive anymore, so we don't villainize them. But the poor sharks, yeah.
And I mean, again, another, sorry, I couldn't just resist myself from sharing dino facts, but dinosaurs are still with us. At least their descendants are still with us in the form of birds. So birds are essentially dinosaurs, or the dinosaurs that made it through that mass extinction, along with
Oh,
us, our ancestors
but
that made it through.
if you're giving dino facts like that, then we have to also tell that sharks have been there from the time the dinosaurs have been there. They've been here
Sharks
for
have been
over,
there too.
yeah,
Sharks
for
have been
over
there too.
500 million years or however longer. They've been longer, but we're going to be killing them all, like finishing them.
The
Like
sixth
this,
mass extinction, as
yeah.
we have spoken about.
Yeah, we are the rolling meteor right now, like one big
Right.
8 billion force of meteor energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Okay.
Right.
Um,
That was about that.
yeah, let's go to the next not so funny topic. It wasn't a funny topic, it just became funny. But yeah. Uh, so we are going to be talking about India's wastelands. India's wastelands are actually wildlife havens for large mammals. A new study finds. A new study challenges the notion that wildlife is confined to national parks, revealing thriving populations of large mammals in India's agricultural plains. Research in Karnataka's Koppal district found widespread presence of striped hyenas, sloth bears, and black bucks in the Deccan Peninsula's wastelands, or areas often slated for industrialization. Uniquely, the study leveraged the expertise of nomadic pastoralists, conducting detailed interviews to map wildlife distribution, overcoming challenges with traditional camera traps. Utilizing occupancy modeling and rigorous verification methods, researchers confirmed accurate sightings. The findings demonstrate a stronger connection between nature and agriculture than previously believed, highlighting the ecological importance of these often overlooked landscapes and advocating for their conservation. And as someone who's worked with, the Wildlife Conservation Society in India, and having been to Koppal, it's one of the things that people have a problem with, that unless it looks like a forest, people don't want to protect it. Just if it's just an open grassland, like people think, oh, it's a wasteland. So most grasslands in India is termed as wastelands, like they're just a land that's a waste and you can use it for any kind of development. And that is the idea that most people have. But in Koppal, like it's one of those areas which thrives with wildlife. Like I've seen blackbucks there. The wolves roam around that area, and there's like a coexistence between the wolves and the nomadic pastoralists that they're being spoken about. There is an area there, like this rock structures where different kinds of species, like different jungle cats and foxes, all stay together. So it's a beautiful, what would you say, ecosystem where there's a lot of coexistence of species and there's big mammals being found. I think it's time we revise what we think of as wildlife places and what needs to be protected.
Mm, mm. I think um, blanketly terming. I mean, I again, as I said, like there is a requirement for you know land for development, economic growth, industrial development, etc., especially in growing nations like India. But blanketly terming every grassland as a wasteland is also not correct. I think there are enough environmental scientists in India. There are enough bodies who are researching these particular issues and particular ecosystems in India. There are people who are advocating for these. There's the local knowledge, the people who live around there. I think all of these should be taken into account before declaring a piece of land as wasteland, and you know, uh, ready for development, or something like that. I think that's
Definitely.
something we need to take into account.
Yeah, our discussion question is also that, like, can integrating indigenous knowledge with science redefine conservation beyond traditional protected areas? And the answer is yes. Like, you have to talk to the locals and find out what what animals live there, if there's wildlife worth to be protected, and then only term any area as a grassland or a wasteland or anything else. Because in this case, especially with koppel, and I've spoken about this in other episodes as well, these nomadic shepherds or pastoralists, how it works is that there's like agricultural land, there are farmers, and they actually call these nomadic shepherds onto their land, and they give them space to like stay there. So what happens is these sheep or goats, that they have, the goats, those goats would like have droppings in these areas, and these droppings are natural manure for the agricultural places. So it's like a win-win situation where these nomadic shepherds get a place to stay, and the agricultural land becomes fertile because of the sheep, the goats that they have, the sheep or goats that they have. And they, because they're not confined to the same place, they keep going to different agricultural places. So because they're that nomadic, there are times when the wolves come and hunt their hunt their cattle, and they do take away like some of the weaker goats. And these nomadic pastoralists, they actually think of that as a blessing. Like, they're like, oh wow, the wolves came and took some of my goats away. So they
Mm.
take it as a blessing, and they always have reported that their cattle or their herd has grown. So because with nature, it's usually the old, weak, and diseased that get weeded out first. So that, maybe the wolves are helping out in keeping the stronger genes, because they take some cattle out. So that is like a beautiful mix in that area, where these nomadic shepherds actually are like pastoralists, because they are fertilizing the land. The people want the shepherds want the wolves. Everyone wants each other. So you have to take this indigenous knowledge into account.
And I think Koppal is one of those places where, um, you know, this actually is very evident, where there is a beautiful harmony between um, the locals and the wildlife that lives around there, which I think which I think is very, one of the unique places which actually we hear a lot of stories of cooperation rather than conflict.
True. In fact, they call the wolves as the Sodra Mama, like, like my mom's brother. So they think of the wolf as a blessing, and they always look at the wolf as something to be worshipped rather than something to be fought with. They do have problems with the leopards, though, sometimes, because the leopards hunt more frequently than the wolves do. But with with more and more of these wastelands, like these wastelands or grasslands are the main areas where these wolves hide. So it's getting harder for these wolves to thrive in these places. So the government needs to take local knowledge into account, see what wildlife species stay there, and then put in protection measures according to that.
I fully agree with that. I fully agree with that. Hopefully, the government listens, to, because this has been a, not a demand, but like a request from the conservationists and people who care about this area, people who research about these areas. This has been an ongoing request from them for several years. Since I think since the time of conservation and whatnot. So I feel like to discount those issues or those requests, I think that's just a colossal waste of the public's money, because ultimately the government is spending the public's money, and I think the public should and can have a say in that matter. So yeah, I feel like we'll track the story, and I think indigenous knowledge, as we have demonstrated from stories that we get from South America. Again, South America praise here, but they have been trying to incorporate a lot of that, either through local governments or through indigenous communities actually, leading the protest and being the leading voice in those movements, making those changes, and taking that indigenous knowledge into account. Um,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, so let's just hope that there's better protection. I'm anyway already, like, I mean, I feel like at least with India there's a lot of protected areas, so we can hopefully expand, especially where the locals are cooperative of such kind of expansions. But moving on from that, do you want to talk about the Pokemon app?
Yeah. That is another interesting one. Um, so this has been, again, being a birder. This has been on my feeds on different social media platforms for some time now, and I've been served ads from this app as well. This is a story from the Guardian and is titled or headlined "Gotta Watch 'Em All." This is Gotta Watch 'Em All. Pokemon-style app for birdwatching launches. BirdX, a new app, gamifies birdwatching by awarding points for each species cited, encouraging users to collect digital bird cards. Inspired by Pokemon, the app allows friendly competition and has already logged 200,000 sightings. Developers hope to engage younger audiences with nature through rewards-based system. While praised by users like Michelle Williams for family engagement, the app faces criticism for utilizing AI generated bird artwork, prompting some to uninstall. BirdX is currently free, though future content or features may become paywalled. The developers defend the app as a tool for learning, aiming to make screen time more positive and foster appreciation for the natural world. I think it's a brilliant idea at its core. I think, unfortunately, gamification is something that works for us. We have seen, when Pokemon Go was launched, people just going willy nilly out of their houses and doing all sorts of different things out in the open, facing some threats as well. But this is a more positive way. This is a more, you know, uh, citizen science is truly very important. I think bird sighting recordings, although this is a gamified application, recording bird sightings does have a wider impact in terms of recognizing habitats, recognizing ecosystem, recognizing hotspots, etc., etc., etc. Um,
And also,
yeah,
I think it would help like researchers if they can like collect this data
true.
for sightings. The only obviously drawback is that it has prompted some users to uninstall because of its AI generated images rather than like real images.
Mm.
um that could be something that can be improved, like, you know, instead of using AI generated, they could use real bird images with like VFX or something, or just like, you know, like make it a little more gamified, but not completely rely on AI, because I think this is like your gripe with AI as well. So if you're
Yeah,
doing something good
anything.
for the environment, then this is kind of backtracking it with using AI.
True. If it's just the carbon footprint of this app is huge, because if it's using AI, which it is, from the looks of it, it is having a huge carbon footprint. Um, I will just quickly share um, the small screenshot of this app. This is what the app looks like, and you have the different bird species, and you can collect them or not collect them depending on if you have seen them or not. Now, for people who do not know, or people who are not birders, I mean, very few people would know, but for people who are not birders, um, I just wanted to say that there is a huge citizen science project, one of the most successful citizen science projects, that is run by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And they have a whole system of apps, or a whole slew of apps, most popular one being eBird. And this, they haven't gamified it, but essentially, um, it is the same thing where birders use the app, and there is a friendly competition going on between birders and bird photographers and all the people who are interested in bird sightings. At how many species have you spotted? How many lifers this year? Lifers are the one, you're spotting it for the first time ever for yourself, and there is a friendly competition going on. So this is, I think, mainstreaming that with a nice interface and nice gamified rewards, etc. And I'm sure that at the in the back end, the Cornell Labs database is what they're using to get all the data about hotspots and locations, etc. So citizen science is really important, and Cornell is one of those examples where it has worked out tremendously well with thousands of users logging bird sightings. They have actually logged bird sightings in areas after maybe 100 years. I was part of one of those bird watching groups where we sighted a Japanese flycatcher after a period of 130 years in that particular region of Uttarakhand, in north east ish India. And yeah, citizen science is really important, and this just demonstrates how it can be propagated to more and more people.
Yeah, and I think eBird is one of those sites where, like, if you're into birding, then they really judge you if you're not on eBird. Like, similarly, if you read books and you're not on Goodreads, so they're like, "Are you on Goodreads? Do you have a Goodread account?" So it's similar to that, like with eBird, like, "Oh, have you logged this on eBird? Are you on eBird?" So yeah, so if you're into birding, if you're into reading, like, make sure that you go with the flow, and where the people are. But this is a good, I think, start. It is a good way to get the younger generation definitely involved, because like eBird might not be very appealing to them with no artwork and similar kind of things, but in this case with the reward system it might actually attract them. Hopefully they change the AI artwork into something more subtle, something more nicer, that resonates with the real bird, like that looks like the real birds. But other than that, that's a great idea.
Mm, yeah, it is. Cool. What's the next one you want to pick up?
Okay, so I think I want to pick up the the bird flu virus that has been spotted in Antarctica in the penguins.
Ooh,
Um,
nice.
yeah. So Gentoo penguins are the first birds on Australian territory to contract H5N1 as bird flu spreads. The H5N1 bird flu virus has reached Australian territory, confirmed in Gentoo penguins on Heard Island. This marks the first time the virus has been detected in birds with Australia's jurisdiction. Previously, the highly contagious strain was found in southern elephant seals and fur seals on the remote subantarctic island in November 2025. And if people remember, we had done the story that there are birds that migrate all the way to Antarctica, and these seals consume them. So the seals were found to have the H5N1 virus because they had eaten the birds that had the bird flu. Scientists from the Australian Antarctic Program detected the virus during a second voyage to Heard Island, located 4,000 kilometers southwest of Perth. Experts expressed serious concern over the virus's spread to new species, warning that the Gentoo penguins are unlikely to be the last affected. The H5N1 strain poses a significant threat to vulnerable Australian bird populations, including the Heard Island cormorant and sheathbill. And this is, I think we've seen this with most viruses. Like viruses don't die; they just mutate.
Mhm.
So it's the same thing with the the HIV, the COVID, or any other virus. Once there's a virus, it's very hard to like remove the virus from from the environment completely. And with a lot of migration that happens with birds, it's harder to kind of confine viruses. Like at least with humans you can confine viruses by like locking down a place, but with birds that is not possible. So we've already heard of stories where there's cross communication or cross spread of this virus, and now we're seeing that in the penguins all the way in like almost like a remote island in Australia. Like it's 4,000 kilometers southwest of Perth. So it's really sad to know that bird flu is spreading that way. We do not know the impact or how many birds or seals that are consuming it or any other species are actually dying from this. We don't have enough research on that.
Yeah, unfortunately, it must have. I don't know where it came from, but I believe this is like the Australian controlled part of Antarctica or the South Pole. Um, like New Zealand has Ross Island and other subantarctic. These are subantarctic islands. That's what it's called. The subantarctic island. One of these is Herald Islands. So only quick fact: only four species of penguins that live in Antarctica and subantarctic islands. That's um, the only four species of penguins: Adelie, Gentoo, Emperor, and what was the fourth one?
King? No.
No, not
Um,
king.
um, Religion too.
I should know this. Chinstrap.
Yeah, okay.
Um, Adelie, Chinstrap, Emperor, Gentoo. These are the four species of penguins that live in Antarctica, sort of the South Pole. Um, and I think Emperor are the ones that can stand really, really cold temperatures. But this is spreading to the Gentoo penguins, which is concerned because, as Meghna said, like they travel around a lot and sea because penguins are seagoing birds, right? So they have get rid of their flight over evolution and transform their wings into more paddle-like things, so they can be very swift underwater. They can hold a lot of breath underwater as well. So um,
Yeah.
hopefully the concerned authorities and the concerned scientists and the science organizations are tracking the story, sorry, not the story, but tracking the spread and taking measures that are required to effectively contain the virus as much as possible.
I think it's hard. It's really hard because the kind of migration and the kind of interaction that birds have is very different to how humans have. So the only thing we can do is research and see the spread and the impact and the deaths that it is causing. But I think it is very hard to like kind of control it, and it is also very hard to like kind of administer any kind of vaccine or anything if it's spreading that soon. It spread across species. Like we heard about the elephant seals and the study that was done on them. So and it has spread to humans as well. So it has like that tendency to affect cross species as well. So I don't think it's going to be easier to kind of protect or control, but there might be ways that we can kind of weaken the virus, maybe different things that can be given in the environment or to the birds or something like that. But this story would be studied because we covered this November last year as well. We're covering it now, so we'll keep you updated about what is happening, and we really hope that there's some long term solution for this virus.
True. True. Um. Cool. What are we doing next?
I think it's time that you pick up your chimpanzee story now.
Yeah. The chimpanzee story. Again, it's a short story, just more of an update rather than a story. And our guest will be talking about this as well. We still have time until our guests arrives. We'll still talk about a few more stories before then, but um, this is the chimpanzee story. So this is from National Geographic. Again, viewers will know I love stories from National Geographic since they have beautiful, beautiful pictures included in them, photographs, beautiful photographs. This is a photograph of a chimpanzee, of course, and this story is titled "Chimpanzees Astonished the World by Learning Sign Language." Now, only two are left. Tatu and Lewis are the last two chimpanzees surviving from groundbreaking 1960s 70s experiments testing if apes could learn language. Researchers taught them American Sign Language, challenging the belief that language was uniquely human. Now residing at Fauna Foundation, Tatu knows 250 signs and Lawless 78, using them to communicate desires for food. Tatu loves cheese and coffee. Lolis prefers chase and activities with caregivers. The experiments sparked debate. Was a life in captivity, even with cognitive enrichment, worth the linguistic insights gained? While the chimps demonstrated remarkable language abilities, ethical questions remain about the cost of the research and the chimp's lifelong confinement. The study continues to fuel discussion about animal cognition and definition of language itself. Obviously, our guest won't be focusing on these. His research is very much different on a different direction. But I think chimps are fascinating creatures in a whole and very close to us, behaviors very close to us, a lot of tool usage, etc. So yeah, it's fascinating to hear about the last two chimps knowing ASL.
I think the problem here is that we inherently assume that if animals don't talk our language, that they do not talk a language at all. Like they don't have a language of their own. Like we have this desire that they have to learn our language, and our language is the only language that exists. There's a saying, especially with Hindi and other regional languages, they call animals like as something that doesn't have a voice, or that can't speak. So we kind of assume like that animals don't have their own language, but they do. We've seen it in marine mammals, we've seen it on with land mammals. They have their own language. So I think it's really really cruel to keep two chimpanzees confined for their entire life just so that we could teach them ASL and prove that they could learn our language. Like, I mean, we've come from them. They're our ancestors, so they have their own rudimentary style of language. We don't need to force our language onto them. They should live in the wild, eating leaves and talking their own language.
Yeah, no, I think there were more chimpanzees like that, and now only two are remaining. So, but I do think, like, I don't know, the research, in my view, the research, not in my view, but the research wasn't only to teach them sign language, but also try to understand. I would believe that that was a greater purpose of the research, is try to understand their lives and how they see the world, basically. Animals do have their own way of communicating with each other. Definitely, they do. They need to, actually. That is kind of a requirement if you're living in a group. especially if you're not a solitary animal, you have a requirement to have some kind of um, language or some method of communication to go back and forth. Um, but the
Then you
problem
do
is
it then you do it the
we don't
Jane Goodall
understand.
way. No, but then you do it the Jane Goodall way. Like you go into the forest and study them for your entire life, and then you publish the research, and then I mean, Jane had the same thing, right? She spent her life with chimpanzees, and the chimpanzees understood her. She understood the chimpanzees without torturing them, without keeping them in a confined space, without teaching them ASL and saying that you have to learn this language so that I can understand what your nature is. And I think with confined animals, their nature is very different to wild animals, right? Because confinement changes the way that they behave. So that is not even a great way to know their behavioral exchanges or how they stay in the community. The better way is to go out in the wild and see how they behave. So, I mean, Jane Goodall is lauded for that because she spent her entire life out in the forests instead of saying that, okay, let me pick up four chimpanzees, bring them to a lab, and then study them.
Mm, yeah. Um, Great story. Again, hope I don't think any more chimpanzees are being captured and taught sign languages. One of the points of the story, the story is trying to make. But yeah, I think Meghna makes a good point there. um the Jane Goodall way is a very, very potent way, and I think with the technology improvements and everything else, we are at a unique position in the period of human, animal research, where we can observe these wild animals in their native habitats and possibly learn more about them, than we would learn just by communicating with them directly in a
Yeah.
confined environment, right?
I mean, there's one thing though I'm really proud of, like as a species that we've come to, like when we were younger and you'd go to those local circus shows and all, there would be like these animals, elephants, bears, different animals that were tortured, for our environment. All of that has stopped with movies. They have to have this disclaimer that no animals were harmed in the making of
Mm,
this. So there is a positive change. Obviously, there are other things that can change, like Sea World, Marine World, that entire story we've been covering about these kind of places for environment, like so hopefully the changes will come in those places as well, like captive research, captive animals for entertainment, zoos. Hopefully everything will transition to the wild, at least with the chimpanzees. Hopefully with these two chimpanzees, the lineage would end there, but then we do ethical research going forward to find out their language and pattern and behavior.
right, right. That is something we are hoping for. As Meghna said, a lot of even like cosmetic companies, etc., have made sure that they are not using any animals for testing, and I think CGI has come in a lot, very, very much handy in that space as well. Not forcing or not having producers use you know real animals, because there was a time where shows like Flipper showed a lot of the dolphins doing um, tricks and things like that, and same with chimpanzees. A lot of shows and movies that showed that. So yeah, I think that's all we have to
Yeah.
say about that particular
Ho-
story. Yeah.
yep, and hopefully, like there'll be just better and better research, not involving the confinement of animals.
Right, right. Um, cool. Um, we have our guest online. We will soon start the interview. I'll just do some, um, you know, technical things before we get to that point. Do you want to quickly introduce our guest, Meghna?
Sure, sure. So today we are joined by Aleksey Maro, a finishing PhD student um, in the Dudley Lab at the Department of Integrative Biology, University of California, Berkeley. His thesis is titled Towards a Wild Fermentation Ecology, Alcohol Within Floral Nectar and the Frugivorous Diet of Chimpanzees. The first chapter, titled Ethanol Ingestion via frugivory in wild chimpanzees, was recently published in Science Advances and received global press coverage. The second chapter, titled Urinary Concentrations of a Direct Ethanol Metabolite, indicating substantial ingestion of fermenting fruit by chimpanzees, was recently published in Biology Letters. Another chapter, titled Ethanol Concentrations Within Floral Nectar at a Mediterranean Climate Botanical Garden, is under review. Future research interests include studying the microbial ecology of wild fruit and the effect of fermentation on primate foraging decisions and gut microbiome. He's also interested in investigating the origins of intentionally directed alcohol production worldwide by studying modern and ancient DNA of humans, as well as the wild and domesticated strain of brewer's yeast.
That is such a decorated introduction. Hi, Lexi. Welcome to the Wildbit Show, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
So, I think we always like to begin with the question we love to hear about a researcher's journey that has led them to their current research interests and, the paper in question as well. So, share the journey that you have taken.
Yeah, well, where to begin? I, uh, I guess there's a lot of places. I started my PhD. I'm in the ninth year PhD student. I'll admit that right away. It's a lot of years to be in the program, but I went through the pandemic and a few other things. In my PhD advisor, I worked with him as an undergraduate actually, and I was looking for a PhD program when he told me, well, I don't know if you know this, I wrote this book, The Drunken Monkey, a couple of years ago, and he had some suggestions for PhD studies at the back of the book, the last chapter, and he said, read it and see if you're interested in. And so that's how I kind of got into the Drunken Monkey. But when I read it, it was one of these things. I didn't even have the words until more recently, but it's this part of this group of ideas called evolutionary medicine, where the sort of health issues people have today can be explained many times, often by evolutionary forces and a mismatch with our ancestral way of living. And so I thought, wow, there's a lot here. I can. It was right up my because I wanted to study science. I was originally interested in history, to be honest. I liked stories and storytelling, and I thought one of the most powerful things we do as humans is tell these stories about what's happening and why are the things that are happening, and it really decides what we do afterwards. But I realized shortly after sort of being left to my own devices as an adult and studying history in a community college that history is something that almost nobody was willing to pay me money. They wouldn't even paint me a rosy picture. Nobody, when you say I want to be a historian, nobody's like, that's a good idea. It's always like, how are you going to eat? Because nobody pays historians, it's not a profession. And I thought, I'll always be interested in history. I'm always interested in reading, so that's not a problem for me. But the thing that I want to know and that I need to know that I don't understand is science, and I can't teach myself science. So I thought I should look there, because everything today, everybody will hold it over your head, some scientific argument, and if you're not versed in what that is, then you're helpless. And I just didn't want to be helpless in the 21st century.
Right. And like it's good that you mentioned Robert Dudley. I have been sort of since I read your paper, and as we said in the intro, it had received a lot of global media coverage. I first came across it, in the Nat Geo story. You mentioned Robert Dudley. I've been reading the Drunken Monkey. Very very interesting, very short but very interesting book as well. Good that you mentioned the Drunken Monkey Hypothesis. So for our listeners and for us as well, who might not be familiar with it, what's sort of the idea behind the Drunken Monkey Hypothesis, and in a general layman's terms?
Yeah, so there are a couple of facts, just a couple, that
Hmm.
kind of explains everything.
Right.
The first is that all great apes today, except for mountain gorillas, eat more than half of their diet in fruit. Um, and so that's mountain gorillas would eat fruit, but they live too high up at a high elevation where fruit doesn't grow. So they dig up tubers, which is kind of similar. It's a carbohydrate storage tissue of the plant. But whether it ferments or not, whether any of these things ferment or not, was a question when I was starting out. And the reason, yeah, so that's the first thing is all great apes today eat fruit, and therefore it's very likely that our ancestor also consumed fruit, the ancestor of great apes, and our ancestors are great apes. So it's very likely that we evolved eating fruit. Okay. The second fact that very few people know that was just blew me away is how much chimpanzees eat in a day. If you ask how much does a chimpanzee eat in a day, you'd think it'd be an easy question to answer, but oh, it's not. If you ask how much does a chimpanzee weigh, like naturally in the wild, not necessarily chimpanzees in the zoo are necessarily representative, but even then, I mean, they're in the wild, and there are 4 subspecies of chimpanzees. So you could ask which one are we weighing here, and all of those things are very, very hard to find. In fact, part of what I published was just how much chimpanzees weigh, working with multiple directors of different field sites to like sort of put a number out there that people don't have to struggle to identify anymore. You know what I mean? And so the chimpanzees weigh around 40 kilograms, we could say, as a, it varies by sex and by site, but 40 is about representative. And they eat 10 to 15% of their body mass in fruit per day. They eat a lot of fruit. But how do you know how much fruit a chimpanzee eats? Let's just, for now, we can uh, we can get into that, and it's very difficult to really ascertain. But the closest number we have to a number, what I identified as 4.5 kilos, or about 10 pounds, which sounds like a lot. 4.5 kilos is a little more than 10% of a 40-kilogram animal. It
Mm.
sounds like a lot, but 10 pounds of fruit. If you've spent a day eating nothing but fruit, you know, everyone should try it. I mean, why not, right? Like, what's what we evolved doing. And you'll see, you need to eat like an entire bowl of fruit to feel satisfied, and several times a day. And it adds up to some fraction of your body weight. And if a tiny, tiny amount of that is alcohol, we're talking 0.3% is what I found in the fruits. When you eat 10% of your body weight worth, it adds up to where on an annual average, right? So I didn't estimate how much did chimpanzees eat, but the annual average is 0.3%. Not a lot, right? You get a beer in the store, it's 5%. 4% is like very low. I've tried getting a buzz off of like 3.5% beer, and you have to keep drinking it, and it's like it's not even doing anything. So it doesn't seem like 0.3% is a lot, but that was the thing that made the Drunken Monkey go from kind of this dubious thing, because it's like, you need, how much alcohol do you need in the fruit for a person to get something, right? It needs to be so much alcohol in the fruit that somebody would have like smelled it and figured it out by now.
Mm.
And no, you didn't even have to go out and measure it. You could have just done the hypothetical math I did as a graduate student and try to figure out, well, what am I looking at here? What uh, amount of alcohol would I need to find in the fruits that chimpanzees are eating to even have like a physiological basis for something? And yeah, so it turns out it's pretty low. And I used 3 different methods to to estimate it. So sorry, I'm supposed to be answering what is the drunken monkey, and I moved on past that. But basically, chimpanzees consume 1 or 2 drinks per day in their diet, is what I found. And the drunken monkey kind of suggested that the reason that we are attracted to alcohol today is because we've been consuming it ancestrally in our diet since the beginning, basically. And that's and that the alcohol use disorder that people experience and all of the sort of ill effects are, like in large part, would be the result of a mismatch in the available amount of alcohol and the amount of alcohol you can get back then, which is not, a chimpanzee can't get any more alcohol than it can fit fruit in its stomach. So it has this extra challenge. Yeah. Anyway, I'll give it a pause there.
So with the chimpanzees, if they feel the buzz, do they feel the buzz similarly to us? Like, when they feel drunken, do they feel drunken?
Yeah, so that is the question, right? That's the main question, and I would love to be able to answer, but all I can do is answer it kind of hypothetically. Same way, a little bit like of a, well, if then sort of thing, but you can really put some dimensions on it. So what do chimpanzees do, right? What is the most interesting thing that they do? One of the interesting things chimpanzees do is they have this social hierarchy, and they do this thing called pant grunting. That's how you know who's who. They'll do this certain kind of acknowledgement, and the other one sometimes won't even turn, to look. They're just accepting the assurance. And when one chimpanzee wants to challenge another one, they do these displays where they scream and they throw sticks up in the air and they make a big commotion for about 20 to 30 seconds. The longest one I think is like still under a minute. Like they don't, but the displays are emotionally charged. If you are a lower-ranking chimp and you do a display in front of a high-ranking chimp, you might get beat up. You have to be careful if you don't know who's watching. They might, and I've witnessed a lower-ranking chimp get permission from a high-ranking chimp to do a display, which is like amazing just to actually see how the gears turn. So that's one area where a little bit of courage from alcohol overlaps with a sugary ballast, right? It's good to have some calories in your stomach, which sugars provide, and there might just be enough alcohol to make a difference. Another behavior like that is going on patrols. Chimpanzees are patrilocal, which means that the males never leave. They stay in the same few acres, I don't know what, a few square kilometers of land with some fruit trees. A good patch of fruit trees is really what a chimpanzee community needs. And the females, when they reach 12, 13 years, they'll go to a neighboring community. But the males of the neighboring communities never meet. They never, unless if they do meet, it's in violence, right? And that's the thing. And so they do these patrols, boundary patrols, where the chimps go and they smell the ground and they listen, and they, kind of on the edge of their territory. It's a very life or death kind of situation. Sometimes they'll like spray diarrhea before doing it because when you're stressed out, you want to empty everything out. That happens in war too, it's a similar thing. And yeah, so there's a study that one of my colleagues, co-collaborator, one of the directors, a few of them actually did this study where they asked what predicts when chimpanzees go on patrol. And they found 2 significant variables out of all of their data, right? They collect data every day on these communities. Every day they have multiple people going out following them. And they asked what predicts the hunt, not the hunt, the patrol. And it's how many males happen to be in one place at the same time, adult males, is the biggest predictor. If you're already all together, then you might as well go on patrol, is one way of looking at it. And they had this secondary thing, the presence of this certain fig species, Ficus macuso, the most popular food item by these chimpanzees. And it was just like, yeah, it's a big variable having food and this tree, and I don't know. I mean, like it was sort of a bit tenuous, but this tree, Ficus macuso, it's amazing. And I did the calculation. They would have to eat 70 of these figs that are, they fit in the palm of your hand. I mean, it's like a little bigger than a store-bought fig. The ones we usually eat,
Mhm.
and the little what the chimps are eating are a little bigger. But 70 of those would amount to a drink, 72 of them to be exact, based on the numbers that I calculated. And we can talk about the uncertainties and limitations of all of that. I certainly love to talk about that. So there's these potentially these effects where if they are, and this is the problem with ethanol, alcohol, is that it's undifferentiable from food. So essentially, this is what I was saying. If you want to go into a high energy situation where you might need every last ounce of your strength, you should tank up on as much fruit sugar as possible. If there's a big fruit tree like Ficus macuso, which is like this massive fig tree that has enough figs, I collected figs for 4 weeks straight from one tree where chimpanzees were eating the whole time. So they really last, and it can accommodate a dozen chimps easily simultaneously. So the males are up there eating, and then they're ready to go on patrol because they have sugar, they have the numbers, and maybe this third variable. And that's really the closest we get.
Right. Yeah, but that's the interesting bit, right? Like, we have determined now that there is this variable that is that sort of precursors the patrol and displays. So yeah, that just I'm sort of in that in my imagination. I'm going back to when we were like that, and we might have done those similar kinds of behaviors as well. Very, very interesting
Yeah,
there. And you said
exactly.
you measured collected figs and measured other fruits as well. So, how did you was that the only way that you measured the sort of the ethanol concentration in those fruits eaten by the chimps, or like what was your method to sort of get that number and there?
Yeah. So I have a couple of studies now, right? The first one, the one you were saying, Science Advances, and that was just looking at fruit alcohol concentrations during
Right.
three field seasons at two sites. So two different subspecies of chimpanzees, eastern and western. And I used three different methods. It was a little bit like a PhD student doing field work, right? I had to figure out a lot of stuff.
Right.
In American popular culture, there's this thing called MacGyver, right?
Mm-hmm.
This TV show where this like really inventive, when you have to MacGyver something, you got to put something together out of what's laying around. I was doing that for a lot of my PhD and figuring out as I go along, and really, really wishing somebody would just tell me what to do already. That's you know, there's
Yeah.
you really start to miss that at a certain point when you're out on your own, out on a limb here. Um, but yeah, so that was I think I might have forgotten the original question now, but
Sort of your
uh,
methods to measure the fruit ethanol concentration in the
sure. Well, so,
fruits.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So there were three of them, and they all involved taking fruit pulp. So I had to dissect the fruit, each different kind. I had a
Mm-hmm.
wonderful time having to pull a new species out of the freezer in the beginning because I had a collaborator who went out and collected fruits that chimpanzees were eating at the time. So he was already studying chimpanzees and he was following them for his own PhD. And he would just put some fruit in a bag on the way back and put them in the freezer. He didn't even meet me. He didn't even know me. Robert Dudley set this up in advance. And I went there and sort of pulled a new species and discovered what do you measure? I'd have to figure out where is the fruit pulp? What are ask them which parts of the chimpanzee is eating, because it's not always straightforward. And so then I had this thing called a homogenizer, which is a scientific laboratory tool that's a little bit like a tiny immersion blender, but it uses a different principle of physics that basically turns fruit pulp into homogeneous mush. And then I would, a couple of the methods are what you call headspace methods, where I would put the fruit pulp in a little petri dish and cover it with non-porous plastic. And then I would sample the air above the pulp that equilibrated, where the alcohol equilibrated with the air, and figure out the concentration of alcohol in that air. And then I would use water and alcohol mixtures to calibrate. I had 3 different instruments that I tried using like that, and a couple of them worked, and I published them. And then a third method that I used involved chemical reagents, where I had to take the fruit pulp, and I brought a centrifuge out into the middle of nowhere in the tropical rainforest.
Wow.
Solar panels. I brought a mini freezer in the West African site. I imported a freezer that was the kind that you can plug in to your cigarette like adapter in the car. So like for fishing, if you're fishing, you can keep the fish frozen the whole way, the whole drive back. You don't have to worry about it rotting or whatever.
Right.
Fish goes bad fast. So I brought one of those out there just so I can freeze the fruits and have enough and solar panels to have enough power for that, and to use this centrifuge where I would separate the liquid portion of the fruit from the pulp, and then add chemicals to it that, over a certain period of time would change the color in the presence of alcohol. And then I had a small cuvette reader, a spectrophotometer, a portable one that I could read the light, and the light would turn more yellow as the more of the reaction proceeded. And all 3 methods were remarkably in sync with each other in terms of like the ballpark concentrations, to the point where it would be hard to argue that this is a methodological artifact, because I used really dissimilar methods, and that was why I used multiple dissimilar methods. But unfortunately, they each had their own logistical issues, so I didn't do all 3 of them at once. And that would be like the thing to do. Looking back on it, it would have been nice if I did a very clean methodological study. A lot of things. Use very, very neat sample sizes, 10 of everything or 100 of everything. I had random numbers because it took a long time I can do 20 fruits in a single day if I worked 14 hours nonstop, and I have data sets of 400, 500 fruits. So it was and so sometimes I would do a few of this, a few of that. No, you need 10 of this and 10 of that. Don't do this crazy thing. Don't improvise too much, but it worked out.
Yeah.
So that was
Brilliant.
so.
I should add.
And then there's a lot more to the methods that I could ask a graduate student about their research, and they can talk all night. That's
Yeah. No, I think our viewers might not be very akin with the whole technical terminologies as well, but thank you for giving us that overview. It's really also shows how much work that goes into, a lot of people might know your study from the media coverage it has received, and sort of the innovative idea and the drunken monkey hypothesis that it has sort of propagated even wider. But sort of it's very, at least for me, and I think our listeners as well, it's very interesting to know the hard work that goes behind, publishing a single paper as well.
Oh yeah. That was 3 field seasons that went into that one paper, and then I went back last August because there was a German film company that was going to film someone that was published a paper about how chimpanzees are sharing fruits. and I wasn't really that keen on their methods, but I liked the concept that chimpanzees are sharing fruits and that there's alcohol in the fruits. And so there's this connection between um, sociality and feasting, and alcohol consumption, and that this, in a way, goes back to the chimpanzees. And this German film company was interested in going out in the field and sort of recording this and turning this into a little documentary. And the person they were working with, it fell through, as sometimes it does. There was some sort of, I don't know what you call it, like like there was like some conflict in the country they were going to go to, and the professor who was hosting them pulled the plug. They were like, well, you don't want to take any chances. So they tried to figure out, well, how do we salvage this, right? And they called me because I've been around at that point, and I called the field sites that I worked at, and got it together to go out last August to Ngogo in Uganda a third time, right? Which is an amazing opportunity. And I thought I could try a few more things because there's a lot more. I mean, this field that I've started working in has been kind of invisible or neglected or something.
Yeah,
there's a lot there.
so cool.
So
cool.
So I went out there last August again, and the three questions that I had was, one, are fruits in the crown of the tree have higher alcohol than fruits lower in the tree? Because there are studies that show that fruits higher in the tree are on average bigger and have more sugar because there's more photosynthesis going on, and that fruits lower down less so. And they showed that larger bodied monkeys, when they're competing for the same fruit crop, dominate the upper canopy. And the whole point of being big as a monkey, it's so disadvantageous because you're more likely to get preyed. But when there's a chimpanzee and a monkey, the chimpanzee gets the good ripe fruit. And that's why a lot of monkeys actually have adapted to feeding on unripe fruits, because you get to them before the big ones even are interested. And that's how you get around that. So and then I went out there with climbing gear and was in the middle of climbing a tree when the chimpanzees started to return to the tree, and I had to go down. And we only had 11 days, so I had to abandon that one. A second project I had is I was trying to look at the microbes in the fruits, and I brought out this like mushroom spore box that they sell for doing like mushroom cloning things, and it's like very aseptic. And I got a little HEPA filter, a little portable one inside, and I got all this sterile stuff, and I talked to some microbiologist friends who do this and got some hot tips. And I was dissecting the fruit pulp to sample and streak on agar plates, just the pulp, to see what I can grow. And I had some control plates, and I had a little contamination. I didn't do it systematically enough, but I did get a lot of bona fide microbes, including budding yeast, which is what I was wanting to see, that there is budding yeast out there, which is what makes the alcohol. Mold maybe makes some alcohol, but it makes a lot of other stuff you don't want. Bacteria, not known for its alcohol. Yeast. So it's in there. But the third part of my project, right, last August, I had 11 days. So the third thing I did, besides analyzing fruit alcohol like I did the first time, was I was collecting chimpanzee urine. And the urine has a metabolite of alcohol present if there's a certain amount of alcohol consumption within 24 to 48 hours. There's a few metabolites that are in the urine. That's because when you drink alcohol, the liver, there's multiple biochemical pathways that break down the alcohol. And the dominant one is the one, the one we study. But there are a few 1% or less very minor pathways that produce these very characteristic metabolites. And so I was out there, the COVID. So the COVID rapid test, you've all taken that. You swab your saliva and you put it on, and you get a line. Instantly, something about your biochemical status. Same thing with the pregnancy test, which is a little bit more close to what we're doing. It's something you dip in urine, and there is a hormone that it detects. And this is the same thing. The same principle was created for this alcohol metabolite for alcohol abstinence programs, or like, so pilots can, you can like do them right on the spot with their urine and be like, okay, you just don't drink for 48 hours and you're good. And so I took those out there to see if I can catch some chimpanzee urine and see if that's a method. And I was not expecting that to be the one, because I thought, they're consuming alcohol, but not enough to like pass commercial, like human level alcohol tests. And they passed almost all of them. There were a few. It was actually more interesting the chimpanzees that didn't pass the tests, because almost all of them did. And that was published last Jan. That's still coming out actually. The there's a press release that's on embargo until the 25th on that one. So there'll be some. You're getting ahead of the curve. Yeah. There's because it's fat. Because the cool thing about having like a COVID test for alcohol essentially is that you can't breathalyze wild animals. That was the first question somebody asked me in a public forum. Why don't you just breathalyze the chimpanzees? Well, you can't, but you can like 24 to 48 hour breathalyze them, and I did, and it showed up in their urine. And you can also get it from hair. You can get it from nails. You can get it from bird feathers, which somebody's already tried and found that bird feathers have this in all kinds of birds. And you can do it even in lizard scales. It's the same. It's hair and nails and scales are all the same thing. Homologous.
Right.
So
that's yeah.
Is it like when these fruits are abundant? Is that the time when they are kind of drunk and they're passing these commercial human tests, or is it something that they're drunk all year round on these fruits? Like, is it just like times when they get access, and then when they get access, they eat so much that they're drunk to that level?
Yeah, so that is also a really, really good question, right? Because the dietary studies that have taken place of chimpanzees are usually not sufficiently detailed to be able to answer a lot of questions, but sufficiently detailed enough to know that their diet fluctuates wildly. Sometimes there's nothing to eat, and all they do is eat leaves all day long. Sometimes, like when I was there, you could argue it was the most advantageous fruit eating time for chimpanzees at all. So when I was collecting the urine, I got really lucky, but I guess for the purpose of this conversation, maybe not so lucky. They were eating this fruit called the African star apple, which is commercially sold actually in Africa and grown, and people have been trying to bring it to the market for a while, but it grows in the wild, and it mass fruits, which means that it fruits every 2 to 3 years based on some kind of environmental cue. All the trees in the forest of the species will fruit simultaneously. And the purpose of that evolutionarily is to like overwhelm animals that eat seeds. Because there's a lot of pigs in the forest that won't even eat the flesh of the fruit, they'll just eat the seed. And so I've seen fruit trees where like there's just a pig eating all the seeds, like that fruit tree, it's wasting its whole crop. And so some species evolved to avoid this, and there's so many fruits that even the pigs can't eat enough, and all of the fruits still get around. And so I was very lucky when we were in quarantine for 7 days, which is their policy to not get the chimps sick. We found out that they started eating this fruit. And so the whole time we were there, they were just eating this one species of fruit, and it made all of the analysis very straightforward. It made everything very easy. But you could argue that it's a very special situation. Maybe the wild thing is that the alcohol concentration in this fruit species that I got was a third of what I found previously. And so this fruit species actually has very little alcohol in it. But the idea is that they eat so much of it so fast because there's so much available that they make up for it in even higher volume. Who knows what percent of their body mass they're eating in fruit pulp, but you watch them eat and they go fast. They're in a hurry. They're wasting. It's incredibly wasteful because they're competing more with everyone else than with necessarily what the tree has. So it's I don't know. Try not to talk too much. Did I answer the question? Sorry, I get a little caught up in what I was saying sometimes. Yeah.
No. Yeah. That did answer the question, but I think one of the follow up questions to that would be like, would you say that they get addicted to this fruits, like they like the feeling of the alcoholism, or is it just a human problem where we actually get addicted to alcohol?
Yeah. So that is so there's a study in 1968 where they tried to give captive chimpanzees and orangutans alcohol in back when you used to be able to do that, right? All of
Yeah.
those apes are no longer. Those of the CDC in Atlanta, Georgia, where they did this, and that they're all of them are in sanctuaries now. But they gave them they alternated whether it was just fruit juice or alcoholized fruit juice, 10% that they would offer them, up to 4 liters in the course of an hour, as much as they wanted to drink. And it's a fascinating study because some of the chimpanzees didn't consume the alcohol. They presumably tried it and preferred the fruit juice and didn't touch any of the alcoholized fruit juice. And some of the chimps went hard all the way. They drank as much as they were allowed to drink, 4 liters within an hour, and they consumed the equivalent of like 12 drinks. And it's a very short paper. Surprisingly, you'd think there'd be a lot more to say, but the authors, they were trying to find, as part of the effort of finding a suitable model to do alcohol research, animal model besides rats, which aren't, as much like humans as we like to think. And the chimpanzees are a little bit too much like people, I think, to do that. And monkeys too, for that matter, it makes it very difficult and rats too. If you ever had a pet rat, oh man. Yeah, so it's all kinds of things, but getting them alcohol is kind of, I don't know, is it animal abuse or alcohol abuse? It's but the researchers noticed was that it took more alcohol for these chimpanzees to start getting locomotor ataxia than it would for a human, especially given their size, how small they are. It took them more drinks than a human their size would be able to tolerate. So the researchers noted that chimpanzees actually handled the alcohol fairly well. Locomotor ataxia is a very fancy word for stumbling around. Yeah, it's locomotion, and ataxia is falling. Yeah. And so the chimpanzees can get drunk, but when are they able to get that much alcohol to do so? And it turns out there are more arguments, really, that they might be better at handling alcohol than we are, because they've been eating ripe fruit. They've been ripe fruit specialists since our split ancestrally, and we have done a lot of other things. They also do this since day one when they're born. And as humans, even if we still have the adaptations, we don't have the environmental stimulus to necessarily get to the same level. And they're doing it with food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And some of the very young subadult chimpanzees were passing these tests. There were chimpanzees that were cycling in estrus that passed the tests. 1 out of the 3 didn't. And by the way, there were a lot of chimpanzees in estrus because when there's a lot of fruits, it affects the hormonal timing of the females, presumably because there's all these calories available. Now's a good time to invest in reproduction, but there might be some signaling, for all we know, right, involved with the alcohol in terms of how the body registers calories. That's another one of those like things to the future to research. So there's it's incredibly widespread. There was one adult male, interestingly enough, that I sampled the urine of 4 days apart. That was the same male, and he passed the assay the first time, and he failed it the second time. And so there's clearly some fluctuation. And I do wonder if at other times when they're eating other species of fruit, if they have less of this metabolite in their urine. And basically, here's the thing. You need essentially a triangle. You need to triangulate the dosage. You need to know how much alcohol is in the fruits. You can look at how much alcohol is in their urine. And the thing I haven't done yet is basically counting how fast they're eating and getting the feeding rate. That's the big difference. If the fruit is biomechanically easier to eat faster, then it might have less alcohol, and they're getting more alcohol as a result anyway. So it's, and this, you could do this with like almost any animal. So I just got some word about a postdoc. I'm starting a postdoc at Notre Dame to do this with baboons in Kenya, in Amboseli. And there's a similar thing. The baboons are digging up grass corms, which are like carbohydrate storage tissues of the grass stem, but they're underground. And they spend more than half the year half their feeding time of the year eating those. And they spend only 10 to 20% on fruits. And you would think, oh, the baboons don't hardly eat any fruits. But how fast they eat can make, in terms of their caloric budget for the year, much more than 10 to 20% relative to the corms. Even though the caloric density of the tissues is the same, you got to dig, you got to, there's all this rigmarole with the grass corms.
Right.
Yeah. So pretty much like, I guess humans, some would be more addicted than others.
Well, with humans, there's a whole lot of variation as well. Yeah. And among humans, what is the kind of variation? I mean, genetically speaking, the biggest difference in alcohol metabolism is between East Asians and the rest of the world. There's this thing called red face. I forget kind of the flush, Asian flush syndrome. I don't know what exactly the term is. There's all these kind of colloquial terms, but it's like when some people in East Asia drink alcohol, they turn red and it becomes very uncomfortable. And it's because of a couple of mutations in some alcohol metabolism genes that essentially make it so that they break down alcohol very fast, but the middle part, and before it turns into basically vinegar in your body, right before you can digest it, it lingers as acetaldehyde, which is much more toxic than ethanol. And so it's a two-step process, right? So they're East Asians, some of them have this fast allele that makes the first part go fast, but then the acetaldehyde builds up and makes them have this reaction because the second part is totally broken. In 20%, the second part is totally broken. 90%, the first one is fast. And in Europeans, this is, by comparison, almost, there's very little of it. It's almost non-existent. And there's some different evolutionary trajectories in terms of alcohol metabolism that are very clear and sort of behave like alleles. When you take like biology class, we always teach students things in terms of alleles. And from a modern genetic point of view, I can tell you it doesn't make too much sense to think of things in terms of alleles, because usually there's so many mutations that affect a trait. It's not like one mutation will affect the trait. But in this case, in alcohol, there are some mutations that have such a huge effect that they might as well behave allelically. So that's the old. And then there's one in Africa that is not spread very widely in Africa, but there's some populations that have appears a faster alcohol metabolism, genetically speaking, amongst humans. So we have a very good idea about humans. But I was actually looking at this. This is just for illustration. Trust me, this is interesting. There's this enzyme in the liver that's responsible, the main one responsible for breaking down alcohol in humans. And I looked at it in chimpanzees and in gorillas and orangutans and in gibbons. And is more variation like in humans than I found in apes in general. So the protein coding sequence for the main workhorse of alcohol metabolism in the liver is identical between humans and gibbons. 18 million years diverged. It hasn't accumulated a single coding mutation. Chimpanzees, there's one difference between most humans and chimpanzees. And by saying most humans, I'm saying the non-East Asians. East Asians have, in this enzyme, have the one mutation that completely changes how it affects their alcohol metabolism. And in the UK Biobank, where there's 500,000 of from the United Kingdom people's DNA, they did this analysis of their alcohol intake and how DNA affects alcohol intake. And this mutation that East Asians have, that's in 2% of the UK Biobank population, is like the biggest, loudest signal unambiguously. Even at 2%, it's like it presents kind of a challenge in analysis because you essentially have to ignore it if you want to understand what the rest of them is doing. You know? So it's fascinating. And I have had people ask me the question of, well, you know, who handles their alcohol better? Because after all, there's all these stereotypes and there's all of these ideas about like which nationality or ethnic group handles their alcohol the best or something. Sometimes there's this kind of thing, and I've thought about it too because there's all, you know, and what we've never had that would resolve that question is something like the drinking Olympics, essentially. If at the Olympics you got everyone to do it and then you administered an exact dose based on their weight and you took samples of blood to see how fast the alcohol is cleared from their blood, and then you see how that matches up to their DNA and to their and you can functionally figure out which people and which populations clear alcohol from their bloodstream the fastest. That might not necessarily be who gets drunk the fastest or not, you know, but that's the closest proxy. And funny enough, when they did this with Australians, and some of them had this East Asian mutation, and the ones that had this mutation had no effect on their blood alcohol.
Wow.
So it might be that you have to have other East Asian specific mutations for the effect, and that these Australians happen to have this mutation, but they didn't have whatever else it is that is making that phenotype that really doesn't, you know, that they don't like to drink, you know, makes it uncomfortable.
Yeah,
and then you ask yourself why, you know. I'm sorry.
No. I think with the drinking Olympics, there would be too many contenders and not enough spots that each country would have.
It would be a very popular sport, yeah.
Yeah, and people would be like, "Oh, I'm training for the Olympics." You know,
right,
I'm drinking, I'm training for the Olympics. Yeah. Yeah. Right. I think you wanted to talk briefly about the limitations that you faced during your research. You had mentioned it in the starting.
Yeah. Well, and just the limitations to the results, right? Like, what do we know? What do we not know? And there's still a lot that we just really don't know. And my studies are all kind of preliminary. The reason they're interesting is because nobody's done them, and the reason that they're sort of, I don't know, I put a lot of work into being very careful because I know that anything alcohol related like this could be controversial, and because it's not a lot of people doing it, it's all the more important to like not, you know, to do it well. That said, how much data there is, how many times you repeat the same experiment and get you know, results, it builds over time. So because it's so new, that's why I went out last summer to get as many more lines of evidence on the same question as I can. And the reason that it's, I don't know, there's so many limitations that, so for example, the way chimpanzees eat, right? And the way they consume alcohol is very different from humans. Chimpanzees consume alcohol over the course of an entire day, and they do it with food. There's something called gastric emptying, so that when you consume alcohol with food, it essentially plugs the hole between your stomach and your small intestines, and that makes it so that the alcohol enters your small intestines more slowly. It's the same way when you drink a soft drink without any food, the sugar hits you much faster, but if you do it with food, then the sugar is slow enough that you don't get as and it's it's not a pure rule, but there's some really precise research on how much alcohol makes it past the stomach, and there's something called the first pass metabolism, where there's some enzymes actually secreted in the esophagus and stomach, so that your body's trying to eliminate alcohol before it even gets to your bloodstream. And there's various ideas about how well that works. It might not, but it works well enough. It reduces it by some 10-20%. And if the more food you eat it with, the more it slows it down, the more your body has a chance to essentially also produce enzymes, right? You're getting calories from the food in addition to the alcohol, and that stimulates your body to handle the alcohol better. And that makes it difficult to compare with humans. All human studies on alcohol are with liquid alcohol in the span of 15 minutes. Like kind of hard to compare. So if anything, we should do more studies on humans that are comparable to what the chimpanzees are doing. The other thing is the microbe, right? A reason I was out there trying to isolate the budding yeast is because I want the smoking gun of what's producing the alcohol. I mean, maybe the plant's making the alcohol. Like, it's not likely that they don't really do that, but the idea that some foreign microbe from outside of the fruit environment has to enter it and to be biochemically producing this byproduct is a multi-step process. How do yeasts even get into fruits is fascinating. In commercially sold agriculture, what you get at the grocery store, there's been enough research to know that there's fruits that are carrying microbes across international borders that might be infecting other fruits. People have been trying to keep that reined in and keep the agriculture from exploding, right? But how much have people studied wild fruits in the same way? Almost nothing. Almost nothing. It's amazing. It's a wide open field. Brewer's yeast is a model organism. Saccharomyces cerevisiae. We sequenced its genome before we sequenced our own. And yet we know nothing about its ecological niche or origin or where it comes from, because so little data is done in the wild, more wild bits. Yeah. So I really like what you're doing. Yeah. And so there's a paucity of research, but there's only been 2 studies where yeasts have been isolated from fruits. One in Panama on Barra Colorado Island, which is in the middle of the canal, so it's very isolated. Somebody was studying multiple fig species, and they got brewer's yeast, what we use to make alcohol, in the figs in the middle of nowhere. And then another study really a few years ago in Botswana isolated brewer's yeast in 10% of marula fruits sampled in Botswana across the whole country. Brewer's yeast might have come from Africa, from South Africa, right? That's what. But people have only looked twice, and both times they found brewer's yeast in wild fruits. Guess how many times people have sequenced bacteria in wild fruits? 0.
No idea. Oh.
Wow.
We know nothing about what's going on naturally with the microbial ecology. It's very, the natural history of microbial ecology is very poorly studied. And so I've been learning, what I'm doing a lot for my future studies, right, is learning genomic techniques. Because these days, there's something called the nanopore sequencing. Have you heard of this?
No, actually no.
So there's a bunch of methods for sequencing, but nanopore sequencing is There's one company that produces it, so I don't want to give them too much free advertising. But Oxford Nanopore, it's this little. They call them flow cells. It's this big. The sequencer. It plugs into your USB.
Wow.
Their video advertising it. They have it running in Antarctica because they say it doesn't. The temperature doesn't matter. This thing, you plug it into your computer and you put in your. You have to extract the DNA, and you have to be very careful with how you add the reagents. But once you do, the way it works, and this is like what is science capable of these days? They
Mm.
synthesized a pore, like how you have in your cells. You know, there's these ion channels that let the voltage gated ion channels. They
Mm-hmm.
synthesized one that lets through DNA. And as DNA passes through this pore, the electrical output of the pore changes. And they have an array of like, I think 512, or if you get the beefy one, you have more of them. And essentially, and each pore has its own sensor, its own voltage. And so that you could sequence like 512 simultaneously of whatever DNA it is, and you can get these long DNA chains. Because the more typical methods, you have to fragment DNA into little pieces, shotgun sequencing. And here you could use these
Mm.
long reads. So I could take it to Africa, extract microbes from fruits, and then sequence them all on the spot. I mean, talk about the ultimate MacGyvering. You don't have to export anything. You don't have to worry about dealing with all this administration. You could just do it. Yeah,
Wow.
so it's an amazing time to be doing science.
Yeah,
That's really true. Really, really true.
yeah. Oops, you have any questions?
I think no, I think you summed up your research in a really nice way, and we've delved into different topics and different subtopics as well. But it has been really interesting to sort of get to the next frontier of that research, and sort of, I guess, from what one of your advisors, Robert Dudley, when he first brought the hypothesis out. You obviously need it needs to go through thick and thin, and sort of more and more research added to it, and it's great to have you do that, and such a curious mind as well. We have just learned so much from it feels like you'd really love that part of sort of exploring part of things as well,
Yeah.
from what you've said so far. um
And we're really
Yeah.
excited for your ongoing research and your future research with the baboons that you spoke about. So,
Yeah.
and Amboseli. So, yeah, like, I mean, we would love to hear about that research as well. But I mean, we loved having you on the show, and you're so passionate about what you're doing because I mean, we could see it. Like, when you were talking, you just love talking about everything that you research. So
Mhm.
it was great having you over, and I wish we could have talked for like longer and longer, but we this is kind of the time that we end the show as well. So thank you
Absolutely.
so much for coming over.
Yeah. Thank you. It's wonderful. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you,
I love
thank
what you
you. You
do.
take care. You take care. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. I feel like that we learned so much, right? It was such an interesting conversation as well, and so many different subjects and topics that we delved into. Um, I feel like his statement at the end as well, like where he said like this is a really great time to be doing science. Really sums it up really beautifully as well, right?
Yeah, and I think I mean, Alexei was really passionate about everything, and he really digged so deep into the research that he had answers for everything. Like, even if you spoke about humans, he had done enough research to know the difference between human alcohol consumption and the chimp alcohol consumption. And it's interesting
Mm.
to know that he's been able to like somehow combine his love for history with with his science. So like, the evolutionary um origins of our alcoholism, as you may call it. So
Yeah.
that is great, and I mean, we wish him the best of I mean, we wish him the best for all his research, and we're really curious to know what he finds with the baboons and the grass that they're eating. So that's going to be another amazing find.
Yeah, definitely we'll track his papers and publish papers as well, and hopefully once he has those research published, we can have him over sometimes else as well. But I think that would be a good time to wrap up our show for today, Meghna. Such an interesting show overall. We're
Yeah,
very efficient with the topics as well, right? We covered so much
super.
today.
Super efficient. I think we should have guests more often because we are way more efficient if the guest is coming over.
True.
We're like, oh, we have only 1 hour, so let's crack in 8 topics in that time. But
True.
for our viewers, like you heard Alexi's research, what did you think about it? Like, did you know that the chimps get drunk, and that is probably why we like our drinks so much? Did you know that it is alcoholism not just in chimps but actually in a lot of animals through different sources, or was this new for you? Like, what did you think about all that was spoken about on our show today?
Yeah, that's really it. And let us know in the comments, and through direct messaging as well, or emails, if you would like to see a specific researcher, or if you are doing research and you would like to share it with the world. Get in touch with us. Get in touch with us. We have had Leucadia through such a contact where her publisher got in touch with us, and it was amazing having a chat with her last time we had a guest on our show. But other than that, as always, do subscribe to our different channels and follow us on all the different platforms. We are on all the major platforms, and we go live on all the platforms simultaneously. So wherever you follow us, you would be able to watch us on our show dates. And if you're listening to a recorded version of this podcast on your favorite podcasting app, do make sure you leave us a review. It just makes it so much more easier to spread this message and sort of spread the ideas to different populations of people and different wide reaching audiences, and share this episode with someone who might be interested in knowing the evolutionary history of alcoholism, or in general how chimps process that particular thing that we humans are very much fascinated about, or if someone is interested in participating or advocating for the alcohol Olympics, as Alexei put it. But other than that, we can probably enjoy a drink after the show. But that's it for today. And we will see you next Sunday. Same time, same channel. Have a good one, guys.
Bye bye.